Can you imagine a Buick Skylark that cost more than a Cadillac? Well, it happened with this car right here, and it was worth every penny. Hi there, Rick DeBrule with another chapter in the automotive evolution, here once again at the Martin Auto Museum in Phoenix, a wonderful collection with more than 180 cars, each one an interesting part of the automotive journey. And this 1953 Buick Skylark, well, this was essentially a custom car built by Buick in a limited run with a hefty price tag. It was built to commemorate Buick's 50th anniversary. But rather than just slap on some badges and some extra chrome, Buick made a lot of changes that almost created a whole new car. And we'll talk about those changes in a moment. But first, make sure you like and subscribe. And the likes are really important for me, so please do that. And in the comments below, let me know what I got right, what I got wrong. And tell me your Buick stories. Did you own a Skylark? Did your family own one of these things? Because this is pretty special. All right, let's talk about this 53 Buick Skylark because, as I mentioned, it was designed to celebrate Buick's 50th anniversary. Once you do the math, it's pretty obvious that Buick was founded back in 1903, and it became the cornerstone, the foundation of the new General Motors in 1908. During the teens and 20s, Buick establishes a reputation for engineering innovation, particularly thanks to their overhead valve engines that were a lot more efficient than some of the other engines available back then. When the Depression hit, Buick didn't just survive, it streamlined and thrived, especially with cars like the Series 40 Special and the Series 60 Century. Like the other automakers, it shuts down civilian car production during World War II and does not produce a whole new car until 1949. That's when they introduced the Roadmaster with its 4 Ventaports. It joined Buick's Super model. By 1952, styling has improved, and it now has the Buick Special in the family as well. Which brings us to 1953. The folks at Buick wanted something truly special for their golden anniversary. So they took a Buick Roadmaster, a convertible, and they started cutting. They took a couple inches out of the height of the windshield. Next, they took the belt line and they put a big dip in it right here. Then they rounded the lines over the rear tires to accentuate that chrome sweep spear. They basically did the same types of things that customizers were doing back then. But as I mentioned, it came at a cost. The most expensive Series 62 Cadillac sold that year had a base price just under $4,200. This new Buick Skylark was nearly $5,000, and it was so much more exclusive. Just under 1,700 were built. If you got your hands on one of these back in 1953, well, you knew something special was happening at Buick. Let's walk around and take a look at the styling of our 1953 Buick Skylark. And up front, essentially what you're getting is a 1953 Buick Roadmaster. This is the exact same look that the Roadmaster was have. In fact, it has a Roadmaster badge right there. Still has that big toothy grille. Of course, a lot of aviation-inspired elements. To start with, of course, you have this beautiful hood ornament that is sitting on top of the hood. But even these, later they would become what we call Dagmars, big points. But these almost look like air inlets for a jet engine that you would find on this Buick Roadmaster. So up front, essentially a Buick Roadmaster. It's the profile, the side view of the car, where things significantly begin to change. And the thing I'll start by pointing out is the door, the swept down door that comes right here with this line right here. And significantly, this one right here, where it dips in the belt line and comes up. If you look at a traditional Buick Roadmaster from 1953, this line is going to be flat, going right across here. But for the Buick Skylark, they're taking it and they're dipping it down. Once again, essentially a custom car that is coming out of the factory. And of course, there's this spectacular chrome element. It's called a sweep spear in the Buick world. Comes all the way down, dips right here, and then goes above the rear wheels. I believe with the Roadmaster, it would have stopped right about here. It's also got this great Skylark logo right there. Significantly, they also cut out the area around the rear wheels, made it completely circular. With the Roadmaster itself, it would have been cut off right about here. Another significant element from a styling perspective is the windshield. This windshield is lower than a Buick Roadmaster windshield, not quite as tall. I believe it's at least 2 inches. I've read some articles that said 3 inches. Even saw one reference to the fact that it was 4 inches lower. I'm not sure if you know the actual facts. Please let me know in the comments down below. But the bottom line, there's no question that this was indeed significantly lower, and as a result had a lower profile and a lower side view. Now, when you work your way to the back, well, we're back into Roadmaster territory again. They didn't do anything truly significant to change the back end of the car. That would really come along in 1954. They would have some pretty significant changes. I love these great Kelsey Hayes wire wheels, 40 spokes on them, and it's really important to point out why they did that. I mean, on one level, it was a styling touch, but also it helped to ease out some of the harmonic imbalances as you were driving down the road, a little bit of the vibration. They were more complicated in so many ways. They would rust, but if you took care of them, boy, those were really, really nice wheels in terms of what they were able to achieve with the smoother ride that you were going to get from this car. So once again, in many ways, very similar to a Roadmaster up front and in back, but when you look at the profile of this car, when you look at the side view of this car, and especially that belt line, you realize how completely different, and really, this is a custom car coming out of a modern, big-time manufacturer like Buick. It's amazing to think they would make so few of these and make such a significant change. Regular viewers of the channel will know that this is not the first time I've done a video about a 1950s Buick Skylark. That's because here at the Martin Auto Museum, we're fortunate to have not one, but two 50s eras. In addition to this 1953 model, we have a 1954 Buick Skylark, and we get the chance to show the differences between the two. And while they made 1,600 of these, they only made about 800 of these. Now, you'll notice the styling of the 1953 kind of has a pre-war look to it. You know, those long fenders coming back, flowing to the back of the car, that great tall hood popping up above the fenders. For 1954, they go to a style which is giving us a taste of what's going to happen in the whole General Motors world, and especially the Chevrolet world in the mid-1950s. Those Tri-5 Chevys, much flatter slab side looks. Very Buick Roadmaster up front, but again, when you get to the side, it has a different style to it. Perhaps not quite as extravagant and much of a change as they did for the 1953 model, but still some pretty significant changes. For the Buick Roadmaster, it would be flat going across here. Now for the Skylark, they still have a dip, just not quite as great. And I love the way it kind of flows into this stylish element right there. They're still using the sweep spear from 1953, but this has now been incorporated as a regular element for the Buick Roadmaster as well. I absolutely love the Buick Skylark logo right there. They also changed the wheel cutouts. Yes, they were rounded in 1953, but now they've added these elements right here with a painted inset. They've done that both at the front and at the back. The thing I love about that, makes the car look like it's moving even when it's sitting still. This has to be my absolute favorite part from a styling perspective of this car. This massive chrome taillight goes from the front all the way down almost to the bumper. This is a one-year element that you will only find on a Buick Skylark. The cost, the expense of creating that was massive. It also changes the profile of the back of the car. And in fact, the back of the car is pretty significantly different from the Roadmaster as a result, especially with these elements right here, these little raised things. We'll call them tusks. They flow all the way down to these chrome elements, all the way into the bumperettes right there. A few years later, we would see something similar to that in chrome on the Corvettes. So this concept on the back of the Skylark really is a great element to look at. So overall, I love the look of this. We don't have any Ventaports like you'd have on a Roadmaster. Those are gone because, once again, this is not a Roadmaster. This is a Buick Skylark, a custom car coming out of the factory, and a great evolution from that 1953 model that you see right next to it. Underneath the hood of our 1953 Buick Skylark is a pretty important engine. This is the brand new for 1953, 322 cubic inch overhead valve V8, affectionately known as the Nailhead. While Cadillac had come out with its overhead valve V8 in '49, as the decade rolled over, Buick was still using its straight 8 that had been in use since 1931. For '53, though, Buick joined the V8 club with its own version. It was narrow and light with plenty of performance. Now, the lesser Buicks got the 264 cubic inch engine, while the bigger Buicks, well, they got the engine worthy of their size. This thing pumped out 188 horsepower. Now, that was below Cadillac's 210, but remember, this was a second-tier brand at General Motors. The Nailhead's relatively small valves and compact combustion chamber created an engine that delivered a lot of low and mid-range pulling power. Of course, Buick's official name for this engine was the Fireball. Fans, though, called it the Nailhead because of the way the valves stood straight up. They looked like nails popping out of the heads. And by the way, this air cleaner right here is attached to a silencer. You see, this thing comes with a big 4-barrel carburetor. When you're pushing down on that throttle, the carb is sucking in a lot of air. And this thing right here made that just a little bit quieter. Remember, it's a Buick. The Nailhead engine proved pretty durable and adaptable. Buick used it from '53 until the '66 model year, eventually replaced in 1967 with a new generation of engines known as the Buick Big Block and Small Block V8 families. But this Fireball, was the beginning of the modern generation of V8 engines in the Buick world. While the outside of the Buick Skylark was very custom, inside, let's say it was very Roadmaster. That's not a bad thing. I mean, the Roadmaster was the top of the line for the Buick world, but they didn't really make a lot of changes. Nicer materials, leather, nice carpeting, but a lot of the same things like the power windows, power brakes that you were going to find on the Roadmaster. This is a convertible, and that creates an interesting situation because they did not offer air conditioning in this car because they thought, why do you need it? You got a convertible. One thing that was new in 1953 was the 12-volt system. They changed the electrical system from 6-volt to 12-volt. And the reason being, you had all of these new power accessories like power seats, power windows, power antenna. To power that, well, they needed a more, shall we say, durable system, and that's exactly what they got. Another interesting thing that they had this year in 1953 was the Easy Eye glass. It was just softly tinted green glass on the windshield that made it look just a little easier to look out of. It was standard on both the Skylark and the Roadmaster. It was optional, I believe, on the other Buicks for that year. Love the great big steering wheel, and because once again this has power steering this year, it's not as necessary as it was in previous years. They just figured they'd stick with it. I do like kind of the banjo style. Now, a traditional banjo steering wheel has 3 spokes with these rods coming out, and it's designed to absorb the impact so that the arms don't get as tired when you're going over a rough road. This has that same concept. They've taken it in a different direction. Probably didn't need it. This was a much, much smoother car. I do like the dashboard, although I will say it's really more late 40s, early 50s inspired, not looking into the future. Now, when you go to the 1954 Buick Skylark, boy, everything changes. It's a much more modern, jet age styling inspired. It's got that big, beautiful bar that goes across the bottom, and some of the controls are, much more modern looking, aircraft style. This, once again, kind of an Art Deco style. I love the Buick AM Selectronic radio. No FM offered, just a Buick AM Selectronic radio. Very nice touch. Looking in the back seat, comfortable, exactly what you'd want. Just enough leg room for hauling people around. Overall, a really nice look in terms of what they've got. Plenty of room. With the top down, boy, this was probably an awful nice vehicle to be riding around in. So, as I mentioned, not a lot of custom touches. Very Buick Roadmaster, but that's not a bad thing. The Roadmaster was the top of the line, and looking in here, you definitely got a feeling that you were riding around in something elegant, something that was a cut above what a lot of the folks were driving back in 1953. Now, the Skylark was not supposed to be the beginning of something for Buick in a big way. After all, they already had the Roadmaster. This was supposed to simply be a statement. Today, we call it a halo car, something that shows how cool a car company can be. Now, as I mentioned, it was successful enough to have a second model year, but that was the end. Remember, they only sold about half as many as they did for this one. Building expensive customized cars just wasn't something that the factory was really meant to do. Of course, the Skylark name did live on after disappearing for a few years. It returned in 1961, and then it was used all the way through 1998. But that last generation of Skylark is a much distant relative of this spectacular custom car that for a time showed that Buick was at the top of its game.